All right, for more, let's bring in executive music editor for Variety, Jem Aswad. I just wonder in a case like this, thanks for joining us, Jem. I wonder in a case like this, now that he has been convicted of these 2 counts as it relates to prostitution, as it relates to Cassie and Jane, the pseudonym there, what reputational damage is he going to experience for this? You know, we had the criminal case, which has been decided today. There were also just dozens upon dozens of civil suits that had been filed, Jem, and you wonder if he is going to see some repercussions from this fallout, even though he has been acquitted.
There will be some, but I don't think there's going to be a lot at all. People still work with Kanye West. People don't work with R. Kelly anymore. But the fact that he was only convicted of the least serious charges, not saying that they're not serious, that says a lot. And there was a shooting incident that he was involved in 1999 or 2000. He basically got away with that. There was an assault in 1999 that was settled out of court. None of those things really hurt him. And this is more severe, certainly, but I think his business is going to keep going. People will still work with him. And as the trial showed, people are still afraid of him.
You also wonder if it's also just the fact that so much time has passed, right, Jem? It's not 1999. If this trial had happened when he was sort of at the height of where he was at the industry, and that's not to diminish, obviously, his influence and his vast wealth, but we're just seeing some of his family members walking out of court now, his sons, other family members now trickling out. You see his other relatives coming out here. We'll wait to see if his lawyers speak. But, Jem, I just wonder if this had been happening in the late 90s, it would be a different story.
Yes, it probably would. There was the change of the culture in society. The culture and society have changed, and hip hop has become much more accepted. I'm not going to say this kind of behavior has become much more accepted, because without R. Kelly, there wouldn't have been this kind of trial or trying to get him on racketeering charges and all that. But I mean, you just saw the way that his family looks. They're not concerned.
Well, certainly he was facing life behind bars, and as his defense attorney said, he would be a fool to do anything that would put his custody in jeopardy now, as he hopes to stay out of prison. And we should find out later today whether, in fact, the judge is going to release him, given that he has been acquitted of some of the most serious charges. You know, Jem, just briefly again, while I have you, I also wonder if, you know, some of it also in terms of what the larger culture makes of a situation like this. When you see those not guilty verdicts on the racketeering and on the sex trafficking, whether it plays into sort of, you know, larger discussions of people feeling like black men in America have been wrongly persecuted and prosecuted for things that others would not be charged for.
I think that's a fair statement, especially at a time when we've seen an awful lot of other people who have been convicted of felonies basically get away with it.
All right, Jem, I appreciate your coverage. I appreciate you joining us on a day like this.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC, or take Today when you're on the go. Just follow the Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.